Good morning, Rotarians and guests, distinguished guests this morning. And congratulations to all the politicians who ran some well-fought races. The invocation this morning, oh, by the way, I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. The invocation is by Jim Ahern. Oops, that's not it. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think this prayer would have been better before the election yesterday, but came out great. Bow your heads. We pray for the bifocals of faith so that we can see the concern of the moment right under our noses, but also see further on. Your purpose in working out your plan in the world you have made. We pray for the ability to see at close range. Our part as a group to become solution partners in the giving of time, effort, and money. And we pray for the ability to see clearly in the distance those who are in the partnership with us. May we look with new vision through these bifocals of faith and then act for the betterment of mankind. Amen.
Amen.
And to lead us in the pledge and the four-way test, Allison Feaster.
Morning, everybody. Are we ready?
Morning, Alan.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, our four-way test. First.
Is it true?
Second.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
To lead us in song, Dick Pearsall.
You know, if you look around, you don't have to go up to Vermont or New Hampshire to see the fall colors. We got them right here in Hudson. So it leads me to think we ought to sing America the Beautiful. So that's what we're going to. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains majesty above the fruited plain. America America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Very good, very good, very good.
Thank you, Dick. And now our president, Joe Avella.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, I'd like to first call upon our secretary, Chris Barker, who will introduce some of our distinguished guests this morning.
Very nice.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests.
Good morning, Chris.
I would just like to introduce or announce some visitors we have today, and if they could please just stand so we can give them a warm welcome. We have Bella from the Hudson Service Learning class helping us on AV this month. Thank you, Bella. And then we have Pat Myers from the Clock Tower Rotary, Jim McKee, District Governor-elect, and Bob Haydorn. He's now representing the Youth Exchange. Thank you for joining us today.
We also have Jim Stanley coming.
And Jim Stanley.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And do want to offer congratulations to, based on the election results of last night, congratulations to President-elect Dave Basil, who is our new mayor, and to Rotarians James Field and Tom Tobin for their election to the Board of Education. Congratulations. We're going to continue with our 3-minute Rotarian this morning, and it is Jeff Tong is our 3-minute Rotarian. You ready, Jeff?
Thank you, Joe.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Jeff.
It's good to be back. I've been missing in action for the past couple of weeks, and you probably saw in an email from Joe. My wife broke a couple of bones in her foot, and with the help of our resident physical therapist, Lynn, over there, she's slowly getting back to walking right now. So I apologize to my AV crew that I'm usually here to help out, but I haven't been here. Been getting a better appreciation of what my wife does on a daily basis. Getting breakfast and lunch and all that stuff for the boys. So. Anyway, 3 minutes. Someone want to start the clock and cut me off at 3 minutes. I was born in Staten Island, New York, raised in New Jersey, went to Franklin and Marshall College. Initially played a year of football there, messed up my shoulders pretty good. I met my wife there and transferred to Rutgers, not because of her, but for academic reasons and being closer to home. I finished up there. I've got 2 older sisters, and they both live in Jersey right now. We moved out here to Hudson, Ohio in 2007 as I took a job out here. I started out in New York on my work experience and was in institutional sales and finance, so I sold investment research to money management firms, mostly on the West Coast as well as in New York metro area. So I spent 10 years doing that. I spent 5 years in pharmaceutical sales in New York, doing door-to-door drug peddling, if you will, in Manhattan. Enjoyed that a lot. It's very different than it is around the rest of the country. And again, we took a job out here in '07 and love Hudson. My 3 boys have a great place to grow up here, beautiful school system, beautiful parks, and things that they can do daily. And as far as the community life goes and Rotarian life, I just wanted to give back to the community. Live in New Jersey, commuting to New York every day. You don't get to know much about where you live, and giving back a little bit. So my father-in-law introduced me to Jim Young a couple years back, and he introduced me here to the Rotary Club, and it's a great time since. So that's me.
Thank you, Jeff. And we are very glad that you're a Rotarian, even though you're not here very often. That's not. But he does participate, and so we're fine with that. Okay, Rich Warfield is next. He has some announcements.
Okay, I'll try to keep this short and sweet and take the emotional part out of it. Some of you may have read the Akron Beacon Journal and Cuyahoga Falls News and whatever else you decide to read online or in paper. But last Thursday, kind of stepping in for Coach, last Thursday the girls volleyball team played their hearts out against Walsh. Where's Roseanne Drake? Is she here? No. And it was an exciting match. It went down to the 5th set for some of those people that already know, and we were up 10-7, and an opportunity came into net for Emily Warfield, who was my daughter, to do a kill shot, and she made the shot, but she came down on a Walsh player's ankle, or foot, excuse me, and it was not a pretty sight. I'm showing pictures, or I'm passing around pictures of her on a stretcher going to the hospital. Her foot was completely turned in when she landed, and so it's not about the injury, it's about what happened afterwards. We went to the hospital until 2:30 in the morning. Thank goodness it was just a severe dislocation, not a break. I've never seen anything like it, and I thought for sure it was broken. The team, our team was unbelievable in their support. They all showed up at the hospital. Walsh sent a fruit arrangement with a card. The team did. The Stowe athletic program called and sent flowers. And, excuse me, I didn't want this to happen. There is a weak side of me, emotional. And then, to top that, Phil Herman calls and checks in on Emily. The guy's got 1,500 students to worry about, and he's calling about one. And the whole school system was fantastic. So I just want to let you know, we have a great, Joe and I talked, and I want to share this with you. It was more about our support system, James. Your school is fantastic. The athletic program from Stowe was fantastic. Everybody was great in showing support of Emily. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Thank you. It's fall fundraiser time, and Tom Page is here to announce that event.
How do you top that, huh? How do you top that? Well, I got up this morning and I had a flash drive with a program on it, but it kind of reminds me of when I taught school in the late 60s, early 70s. Film didn't show up, you have to go old school. So most of you should have a packet that we were given around. If you don't have one, you'll get one. The team captains have them. So if you don't have one, just look over someone else's shoulder, okay? Same as last year, but we got some good, really good news. And the good news is that the caramel corn used to come out of Strongsville. But Crazy But True, which is near Hudson's, a local caramel corn popcorn place, is going to be our supplier. Isn't that great, huh? And the price is even less, which is really good. But why are we doing this? Why are you making me sell roses? Caramel corn I can eat, but these roses, really? Can't you come up with something better? I've heard it all. Well, I tell you what, roses are great. And if your significant other, male or female, wife, whatever, tells you they don't want any roses, they're lying to you. They're lying to you. Believe me. It's just a great gift. People's eyes light up. So, same as last year, roses, $20 a dozen. Caramel corn, a gallon of it, with a nice little can, holiday can, there's 15. Okay, why are we doing this? Was it right here? We're doing it for the kids. Just like Rich says, we're doing it for the kids, we're doing it for scholarships. Sure, the money's going to go into the foundation, but we keep on, each scholarship is around $2,500, right? And we've been very fortunate in the fall here to raise anywhere from 2 to 2.5 scholarships. In other words, between 5 and 7 grand. So we can do it this year too. And we got some newbies here. So here's an opportunity to do something that you haven't had a chance to do before. On the second page, I just put a schedule. Okay, we're starting to kick off right now, so start selling. Larry Santon, who represents one of the teams, Santon Superstars, he's back. He's my ticket guy. He's the intake guy. When you got money and you filled out the form, which is the last page in this packet, he's the guy you come and see. Okay. Anyway, the final day of the orders coming in will be December 9th, and then on Wednesday the 16th, just like we've done in the past, we'll deliver them to you so you can deliver them to your receivers. We have 5 teams this year. How about Schmutz of Smoozers? Is that a moniker, huh? George is in San Diego, so if there's anybody that's on Schmutz of Smoozers, I've got the folder and I'll hand those out. So if you have not gotten one of these packets, please see me before you leave, okay? Are you kicking me off already? Look at that. Tongs Tribes.
I'll hand these out while we're going.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Okay. Nelson's Nabobs, Santon Supercellers, and Drake's Dynamos is back, and they were dynamic last year. I put a, how can you get to the bogey of $100? It's right here. I gave you some examples, but it's really pretty simple. And if you don't want to sell, and you just can't do it, just write me a check for $100 and I'll be happy. Okay? I'm sure you'll have questions. I will send this out electronically also, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Okay. So one of the things that I did forget to do is to pick the Rotarian that's going to give us our 3-minute update for next week and for the following week. So I will go into the pot here, and Art LaFountain, he's not going to be here. Joe Zapatowski. Joe, you going to be here next week?
I was there.
No.
You don't know.
Put me down for later.
The 18th. And then next week, Allison. Allison. Okay. Okay. So again, last week we inducted a new member, Mimi Becker. This morning we have 2 new members to induct, and that is Jay Yard and Matt LaFountain. So I'd like to ask them to come forward. I'd like to ask Rich to come forward, and we will induct them into the Hudson Rotary. Please stand on this side so that we can. Okay. I got everything right there. Your packets. Okay. So Matt and Jay, on behalf of the board and the membership of the Rotary Club of Hudson, it's a great pleasure to welcome you as the newest members of our club. We look forward to the fellowship that we will share, as well as your participation in many club activities that make our community, our country, and our world a better place to live. Rotary is an organization of business and professional people pledged to uphold the highest ethical and moral standards. Rotarians believe that worldwide fellowship and peace can be achieved when business people unite with the Rotary motto, service above self. Our community will know and judge Rotary by your character and service. We will also look to you for inspiration as we strive to become better Rotarians. We now ask your Rotarian sponsor, which would be Rich in lieu of Art, and me for Jay, to vest you with a distinguishing badge of a Rotarian, your Rotary pin, and your badge. Yep.
Welcome aboard.
Yep. And your pin. We won't do that pin now. It's a magnetic one. Yes.
It's upside down.
We're going to stay for a photo
Stand
shoot.
on my head.
Don't move. Don't move.
Thanks, Rich.
We ask that you wear your Rotary pin with pride, not only to all Rotary functions, but in your many endeavors as a symbol of your commitment to Rotary ideals in recognition of your contribution towards a better world. Fellow Rotarians, please rise and welcome our newest Rotary members, Matt and Jay. Rich, you want to go on the other side and take a photo? Photo up. Where's Jim Hackney?
Jill or
Jim?
others?
Jim?
You want to get in here, Joe, or?
Yes.
Of course.
Hey, Joe, you, right here.
Where are you, Tom? No, that would be multitasking.
That's all.
Hey, Rich.
No wonder he's so
And
far
Evan,
away. No wonder he's-
you guys are doing a great job bringing in new members.
Thanks, Tom.
Yes. We're now going to ask both Jay and Matt to give us a little update of your
Okay.
2-minute update.
Me first?
Please.
Good morning. I want to thank you ever so much for inviting me into this august group. It's a very impressive organization. I've looked at a number of organizations, and this is the one that I want to be involved with. I've wanted to be a part of Hudson for 50 years since I first visited early in the 1960s. And fortunately, my son got here first 13 years ago, and I have 3 grandchildren that are in high school and in middle school. And they play field hockey, and they play ice hockey, and they play lacrosse. So I have something to do in my retirement just about every night. I came from Upper St. Clair in Pittsburgh, if any of you know that community. It's very similar to Hudson. Outstanding schools, excellent community activities, and very, very good sport program. Fortunately, I was allowed to coach some Little League. I became commissioner of baseball, then I was president of the Athletic Association, found myself as director of Parks and Recreation, and finally ended up as township commissioner for 5 years. So I know a lot of soccer moms, and I've dealt with a lot of issues. Believe me. I'm an antique dealer, not very active, but my interest in antiques brought me to Hudson almost every year to the Western Reserve show, and then also to Taste of Hudson. I'm really disappointed that Western Reserve doesn't have that show. It was one of the finest in the country. But I love history. There's so much history around here. I love to hike Cuyahoga Park. I read history, I tour history, and I was on the history board in Pittsburgh. So hopefully I'll be involved in that. I was educated at Lehigh University. Thanks to my dad, he sent me there to study electrical engineering and engineering physics. I escaped from that real quick into metallurgy and went to work for U.S. Steel, and then got out of that quickly because I got my master's in business and found my way into marketing. Since then, I've run law firms, I've run publishing offices, and for the last 20 years, I've managed the financial office of Parker Hunter in Pittsburgh. I retired in January, and believe me, I'm really looking forward to spending my years here in Hudson. And I'm anxious to get to know all of you, and I'm anxious to do anything that helps this community, because I believe in the community. So thank you very much. I look forward to meeting all of you. Am I dismissed?
I'd like to echo Jay's appreciation for allowing me to join your group. To give you a little bit of background about myself, I was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and by the grace of God was moved to Ohio at a young age. Attended the University of Mount Union, where they've only lost one regular season football game in the last 200 games, so any Wisconsin Whitewater fans out there, we're number one. We're number one. You know, prior to working in Hudson, I worked in Alliance, Ohio, where I was involved in a number of organizations, Kiwanis and the festival there, and the university and a number of other things. And it's always been important to us, my family, to give back to the community where we work and we live. The fact that Rotary takes on also so many things that affect children is very important to us. My oldest son is a cancer survivor, was treated at Akron Children's Hospital. So that is a very children's illnesses, children's well-being is very important to our family. My wife has worked with Make-A-Wish for some time, and seeing things like the the scholarships, things that are going to improve these young people's lives forever, I think is very important. So I'm extraordinarily proud and appreciative of you involving me in your organization, and look forward to getting to know all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. We are going to move into our program today. I'd like to bring up George Snyder, who will introduce our distinguished guest.
Morning, Rotarians.
Good morning, Lord.
I went to vote yesterday morning, and I fully expected to see responsible Ohio outside, passing out free weed. But they weren't, and there went my vote.
George had run out.
Today is the start of Arts and Culture Month at Rotary. Later on this month, we will hear from Chris Ronayne, who is president of University Circle, and from Joel Alpert, who is director of exhibits at the Cleveland Natural History Museum. Our guest this morning is Paul Jarrett, who is executive director of the Akron Symphony. Prior to joining the Greater Akron Musical Association, which is the organization which operates the symphony, he was managing director of Apollo's Fire, which is Cleveland's Baroque orchestra. During Paul's tenure, Apollo's Fire completed 2 European tours and saw 4 of its CDs hit the Billboard magazine's top 10 chart for classical music. Before that, Paul served as director of marketing and public relations for the Cleveland Opera during and after its merger with Opera Cleveland. His unique take on marketing led to presentations at Opera America conferences and at the Cleveland Foundation Center. Paul's marketing career began at Stern Advertising in Pepper Pike, where he worked with such clients as McDonald's, Pearl Vision, and the Ohio Lottery. He created and produced numerous television and radio spots for Sterling Jewelers and its Kay, Jared, and J.B. Robinson subsidiaries. The Akron Symphony has been a community treasure since 1949. It is now my pleasure to introduce its executive director, Paul Jarrett.
Thank you. Everything at E.J. Thomas Hall is fine. I was told to bring that up and mention that. I'm the executive director of the Akron Symphony Orchestra. We do perform at E.J. Thomas Hall. It is a hall that we rent. I promise this is not the topic of my speech. It is the hall that we rent. It is a hall that is available to us. We've had 3 concerts there already this year. We expect to, we will complete our season there, and we plan to be there for a very long time. So getting that out of the way, I'd like to thank you all so much for having me here to kick off the Arts and Culture Month. I'd like to congratulate Cuyahoga County for their renewal of what was issue 8 yesterday, the cigarette tax to support arts and culture institutions. I was at Cleveland Opera the first time that ballot issue came up, and there was a lot of support, and took us all by surprise when it was overwhelmingly approved the first time. And I was watching from the sidelines this time from my position, slightly south, and was happy to see that pass. The support is great. When I was reading when I was sent the guidelines for speaking today, most of you probably don't even know this, at the bottom of the sheet that you all send is a little thing that says, keep things, we're not discussing anything controversial, we're not discussing anything that's a hot topic. If there is something that has a one side and another side, the other side will probably be here to be represented. And I was driving home the other day thinking, I'm so lucky that I work in an industry where there isn't another side, that there isn't a group of people saying, no, we don't want symphony orchestras, we don't want arts in our culture. But I am cursed with a 1-hour commute, so my steering wheel sometimes hears devil's advocacy types of arguments. So I'm talking to my steering wheel about, well, who would be against us, and what would their argument be? And the steering wheel heard some wonderful things, but I won that argument. However, it caught me thinking then to the next level of, if there isn't, a second podium of somebody saying, why isn't, we should not have the arts, why is it still a struggle to support the arts? Why, as a symphony orchestra, are we still deluged with, your audiences are dying, your audiences are shrinking, your funding isn't there, you need to go find more support? There's no anti-orchestra, but are we doing as much as we can pro-orchestra? And when I talk about orchestra, I really kind of mean all arts in general. Anyone you'll hear speak this month will probably be talking about or feeling similar issues of yes, it's nice and we have this thing, but how is it supported? So what I'm not going to do is talk about, we're an orchestra of 83 musicians. We've been here for, 60, well over 60 years. There's a really nice, and I must say, award-winning brochure on your table that outlines our programs. But what I'd like to do is outline sort of the issues that we do face as an organization, and that the arts in general face, not just here in Summit County or in Cuyahoga County, but across the country, and how what we're doing in Akron has been impacted and affected by that, but also what we're doing to address and to change that. There was a conference recently, League of American Orchestra Conference. It happened to be held in Cleveland, so I took my entire staff, and we went for a week to talk about orchestral issues. And one of the first slides, and I did not bring a slide because I started to make a slide presentation, and I had one slide, and it was the thing I'm about to say, and I thought I could just say it. And the quote that started the conference was, because it was, if you hate change, you're really going to hate extinction. And as an industry, we have been very slow to embrace change. We're not a museum. We're not a come and hear things as they were in the past, because we don't perform music the way it was in the past. And let me give you an example. There's a man that I've worked with in New York named Richard Evans, who talks about technical change versus adaptive change. And technical change is fun and easy. The orchestra needs to raise more money. Well, let's hire more development staff. And now, instead of, I have a staff of 1 development person, now we'll have a staff of 3 or 4. That ought to solve all of our problems. That's a technical change. I don't know how many Browns fans there are in here. I've been cursed and blessed with being a Browns fan since the 80s, and watching it with my dad. And just watching the last few years, I'd love to study this. When I finally have free time, I'd love to study what's happened over the last 5 or 6 years. Because here's an organization that has done nothing but engage in technical change. The ownership, the front office, the general manager, the coaching staff, the starting players have all rotated through. I mean, that's a massive institutional change that's happened 3 or 4 times just in the last few years. And yet still the issues plague that organization of, here we are halfway through a season and we're looking at 2-6. They've embraced technical changes, and if I had the solution, believe me, I wouldn't be standing here talking about it. They've embraced technical change. Those are all examples of technical change. Let's make changes to the people or the way that we do, let's make changes to the people and the structure that we have in place, but it's still not producing results. So what we're looking at in our industry is a similar sort of thing. Many orchestras have tried different ways to draw audiences, and those are technical changes. But what we really need to look at are adaptive changes to the whole way that we conduct and do our business. It's wonderful that we have the blessed opportunity to go on stage at EJ 11 times a year and perform for and with the Summit County and the greater Akron community. That's wonderful, but we realize that's not enough. It's not enough to keep ourselves solvent, to most importantly keep ourselves relevant. You've all been to an orchestra concert. This is a perfect example of this. You've all been to an orchestra concert, and maybe if you go for the first or second time, or you bring somebody, the one big question that comes up with, I don't know when to clap. I don't know when to applause. And there's this big, wonderful orchestral moment, and for those of you who really know music, Tchaikovsky did this at the end of his third movement of his Fourth Symphony. It's big and loud and bombastic, but there's still another movement. So this big, huge ringing sound, big, dramatic, the musicians are moving and playing, but don't clap when they're done. And it's very awkward for everybody in the room because you've been moved to this feeling of like, that was really, really great, but don't clap. That's an artificial construct of our industry. We did that to ourselves about 100 years ago. In Mozart's time, there's actually a very famous letter that he wrote to his father, and I refer to this as Mozart's ice cream. He went to a performance of his own music, and he wasn't conducting, he was just there to listen, and he was getting very nervous, and he was writing his father about this. He said, I was getting very nervous because there was no applause during the movements. And then in between movements, the applause was tepid. But then they got to the scherzo, and after that, the applause erupted through the room, and then they launched into the finale, and it was glorious and wonderful, and I treated myself to ice cream on the way home. Mozart wanted his ice cream. He wanted his applause during the piece and between each movement and at the end. That was normal back in the day. We have, for some reason, changed the structure of how we sit and listen to music. Now, to many, that's off-putting. It's a barrier. Like, I need to come, but boy, I'm going to sit there. I'm not going to. What if I clap at the wrong time? What if I like something and don't want to clap? Ross Binney is the director of marketing at the Cleveland Orchestra. And at that conference, he told a really great story about the Cleveland Orchestra musicians who like to hear applause between movements. Now, don't go up there and just start clapping all the time and say the Akron guy said go clap between movements. But he said the orchestra loves to hear it because it means they appreciated what the audience appreciated what they heard, but it also means there's new people in the hall who don't know. And wonderful. How great is that? New people showing up, and just, that was great, and clapping through the whole thing. I think, again, I'm not here to say we need to start clapping between movements, but if the orchestra doesn't mind hearing it, if the newer members of the audience want to do it, why do we place this construct on our performance that still makes people feel like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. That's not right. When I'm sitting at home and we have a concert, I'll be sitting on the couch watching TV, and it's getting to be time to get in the car and talk to the steering wheel and drive to Akron. I'm thinking, oh, I got to put on the tie because we're going to play Brahms tonight. Like, why do I have to put on a tie to listen to Brahms? But then, on the contrary side of that, I'm looking at my son. My son is 16, loves heavy metal music. And let me tell you, there is no closer corollary between classical and heavy metal. The level of virtuosity is amazing. The things I've learned listening to his music. But in any case, when he's going to one of his concerts, when he's now at the age where he's going out with friends, he's putting on a costume, he's putting on a uniform, he's putting on a certain look and a certain style and to go and to fit in. And so I get that. All right, if you're going to go hear the orchestra, there are people who I like to dress up. There are people who don't get to dress up. And I'm going to put on the suit and the tie and go, and I'm going to sit. And I'm not going to clap. I'm going to be quiet, and I'm just going to listen to these people play. And that's what's great about what we do is people can do that and have that experience and make that what they want it to be. At the same time, I think it's time for us as an industry to move into something that is more relevant and more welcoming to all. So when we look as an organization, we are looking at how do we adapt what we do. And this is what I love about the Akron Symphony. We're a small regional orchestra, which means our musicians are professionals, but they're not employed full-time by us. The difference between us and Cleveland, for example, is once you're in the Cleveland Orchestra, you're in the Cleveland Orchestra forever. And it's an aspirational job for most musicians. For most of our players, they're still professionals. They still go through a blind audition. We audition behind a curtain. But we're not going to be able to pay them. There isn't enough work to justify a full-time position. We'd love to do that, but it's not what we do. When Cleveland is looking to expand, they're expanding to Miami, they're expanding to Europe. They look outward to the world to expand what it is that they're doing. We do the opposite. We look inward, and most regional orchestras do the same. How do we address issues and concerns in our community, because we live here, we work here, most of our musicians have day jobs here. It's a different feel and it's a different mindset. Which leads to this 3-word phrase, and every time, this is the second time I've spoken to a Rotary, and I'm struck by the service above self phrase, because internally, as part of our unofficial mission, we use service to the community, and which is not something that most people would associate a regional orchestra with, or any orchestra with. So I'm going to use 3 brief points to illustrate how we do that, how we address social concerns and serve the community through getting on stage and playing Brahms. And I understand Chris Wilkins, our music director, spoke here about 4 years ago. I don't know how many were here. This may even repeat some of this, because this all comes from the artist, and Chris is the artist of the organization. When you see the brochure, his is the first face you will see on the inside. His is the name that always appears with the logo. And he has 3 points that we all work to embrace. And the first is to make amazing music. And underneath that isn't just, we're just going to play Brahms and we're going to play it really well, but it's also to create an amazing organization to support those performers, an organization that people want to work for and to work with. George was reading my bio, and I realized I hadn't really updated it in a while. This is the start of my 4th season with the Akron Symphony, and just now I was sitting here realizing it's the first year where I really feel like I'm getting to understand everything that it is that we do, because it's such a large, sprawling organization. There's 1,000 people that are impacted directly by what we do just within the organization itself, run with a staff of 6, a full-time staff of 6. I'm very, very happy with my staff. And I recently had the opportunity to hire a new director of marketing and realized we don't have a mechanism for welcoming new staff because we don't rotate staff in very often. She may have been my 3rd new person in that period of time, but most had even come in as a part-time and just elevated to full-time. It's to create an organization where people want to be here and want to do the work, because unfortunately we can't pay very well, but to believe in the mission and to believe in what we're doing. The reason we have the staff that we do and we are as successful as we are, this is a number you'll hear often as well. For a symphony orchestra, and Cleveland has the same percentage, 30% of our revenue comes from when somebody buys a ticket and sits in that seat. They're only paying for 30% of the experience that they are having. 70% has to come from somebody else saying, I want to support this organization. That's terrifying. And let's use Starbucks as an example. 70% of Starbucks revenue comes from selling coffee. 30% comes from the CDs and the trinkets and stuff at the front. They're in the coffee business because 70% of their revenue comes from selling coffee. 70% of our revenue comes from fundraising, not from putting on concerts. So in a sense, we're in the fundraising business. And this is not just Akron, this is Cleveland, this is any arts organization where the majority of your income comes from a non-direct source. That's the business that you're in. When we look at who our customer is, then we have 2 customers. It's the people sitting in the seat trying to decide what tie they should wear and whether they should applaud. But it's also the people who actually write the large checks and make the contributions. And that's where you'll see sometimes an organization that has to shift how they operate depending on what those customers are saying. I have a great example about the Knight Foundation in a real positive way that I'll get to in a minute. So our business is fundraising. Our business is raising money to serve the community through the service of whatever musical endeavor we're engaging in at that point. But we always go back to serving the community. As you flip through the brochure, you'll see a program later in the season called Music in the Mind. I'll talk about that one in a little bit, but it's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. You'll hear about that in a second. The good news about that 70-30 split is once we take in all that revenue, we are a $2 million operating budget. So every year we have $2 million that we have to raise. We're blessed with a $6 million endowment that we draw just about 4% on. Of that $2 million, 90% goes directly back to programming. I'm driving a 2012 somewhat beat up CRV. This is an off-the-rack jacket from. We're not making a lot of money to support ourselves. It's all going directly back to the musicians who live and work and serve this community. So that's something I'm very, very proud of. But a quality art organization performing amazing music. Geographically, our orchestra is closest to one of the big orchestras. We're closest in the country. No one else operates as closely under the shadow of a large orchestra as we do with Cleveland just up the road. That's wonderful and a little scary, I'll be honest. Wonderful because it makes our orchestra a better musical ensemble. Our players substitute with that orchestra. They study with those players. When they're playing a piece that requires 8 horns, generally the 4 extra French horns they have to hire are our players. So when our players play on our stage in Akron, you're hearing a better regional orchestra than most other regional orchestras around the country. It does create that 70% problem, and that's something that we deal with often. Is it's easy and wonderful to support, one of the top 3 in the world. But those players have to come from somewhere, and that's one of our messages that we work with. Quality art organization. We have the second point that Chris and I emphasize often is a strategy of participation and to be as inclusive as possible. Programming that draws the community together. We were talking. You were singing the song that we're doing earlier. By the way, our chorus is all volunteer and is in desperate need of a lot of men. I heard you all sing. You are all well qualified. When we talk about a strategy of participation, it's not just we're going to perform this music and we're going to sit up here in our tuxedos and you're going to sit there in your tie and not clap and listen to us play Brahms. But how often can we include the audience or members of the community on stage in some sort of meaningful role? It would be easy to say, well, we're going to invite a high school band to play, a piece before us on the program, then all their parents will have to come and they'll buy tickets and so on. That's not necessarily a meaningful engagement. What we're looking at is, for example, Chris, really, we look at, when we look at programming and we look at the dates that we are handed for a season. Last year, opening night is a perfect example. Christopher was looking through the program, he looked at the dates, and he realized that our opening night landed exactly 200 years to the date that Francis Scott Key was out on the boat witnessing the battle that led to the Star-Spangled Banner. So we had a program that night that was designed completely around that piece. And we had speakers, students from Miller South and students from Firestone High School who read the story, who read poetry related to that, and then told the story through music of that evening and of that battle, and reading the direct words that he was writing as he was coming up with what became the lyrics for our national anthem. And it culminated in the whole audience rising up at the end and singing along with the orchestra our Star-Spangled Banner. I was 43 years old. I was like, this is the first time I've ever really understood every line in this piece. It's a minor thing, but it changed me. Every time I hear it before a Browns game now, I have a different feeling for that piece. And nobody came that night expecting to have that experience. Nobody came expecting to be educated while being entertained. And that's part of what we're doing. And we're not, and we're using the community to tell those stories. The Knight Foundation has recognized this work that we do and has granted us $500,000 over a 5-year period to expand this community-type programming. to ensure that, so we've been recognized for this, which is unique to us and to this area. Our Gospel Meets Symphony program is a similar program. It's listed in your book as well. That is a completely different chorus. It's made up of volunteers from inner city churches that get together every Saturday for about 3 hours to learn an entire gospel and classical program without music by rote, which culminates in a performance on stage at EJ with the Akron Symphony Orchestra. And it's the performance almost becomes superfluous. It's that community building that takes place over those 3 or 4 months of Saturdays as those people are coming together in fellowship to bring this thing to life. And we do that year after year after year. It's unique to us, and it's unique to this area. So this sense of inclusion, this sense of we're not just going to perform for you, we're all going to perform together. The third is access and eliminating barriers to access. Part of the reason for the 70-30 split is because if we had to charge people what it really costs to put on each of our concerts, no one would be able to afford to come. There's an orchestra, St. Paul Chamber Orchestra did something a few years ago where they would stop the concert at the point that the concert was paid for at an appropriate time, and they would make that statement: this is all you've paid for. They do a pass the hat or something like that, but they try to emphasize the point of this. There is value and there is expense, and most of that expense is going to the years of training and schooling for the musicians that you're hearing on this stage. It's interesting. My wife and I went to. We drove to Toronto this summer to see the band Rush play. She's a big fan. I'm a big fan, and nobody will question paying well over $100 or $200 to go see something like that, or U2 or something like that. There's no question. And when you're there, you're immersed in this experience. You're singing along. They're playing loud enough that it doesn't matter that you're singing along. You're moving. You're not sitting. You're immersed in this experience. It's wonderful. And you think, yeah, I got my $150 out of that. There's lights, there's fire, there's explosions, and great music. It's a really wonderful experience. We can't do that. The lights and the fire and the explosions and play loud enough that you can sing along to, Lutoslawski's Concerto for Orchestra, if you wanted to. But where that expense goes, and so to say, I'll spend $150 to go see Rush, or I'll spend $25, that sounded like a lot of money to go see the Akron Symphony. But it's we're not going to put flashes and lights and sound on stage. It's all going to the musical talent that's on there, and the training and what goes into it. And it's only going to a third of it. It's only going to a third of the talent and training that is on that stage. So when we talk about eliminating barriers to access, we try to keep our tickets reasonable or provide other entry points, like our free Summer Parks concerts, where people can come and experience the full orchestra, in some sort of way that is easy and accessible to them. It's making what we do relevant to the community raises a lot of questions. And the other quote from conference that I remember is, how do we listen to, this is to us, how do we listen to our community with the same time and attention that we ask of them when they listen to us? So my board this year, I've charged my board with how many opportunities can we create to listen to our audience, and not just the people who come to our concerts, but our whole community. I would really like to hear from the people who aren't coming. What can make us relevant to you? What is a barrier to your participation or your access to this programming? I'll wrap up by just talking about that Music in the Mind program. Dr. Richard Kogan, you'd flip past that in a book and think, oh, that's fine. Yeah, Richard Kogan, I don't know who that is. Richard Kogan is a clinical psychologist who studied piano, played in a trio with Yo-Yo Ma back at Harvard, back when Yo-Yo Ma was a kid. He was a kid, they were all kids. And he took a route that was different from what Yo-Yo Ma did, but continued to keep up his classical performing. And he integrates music and behavioral health as often as he can in his practice. And now there's a really great TED Talk that he has online. There's some other speeches or some other talks that he has online where he performs just from a very narrow scope of musicians, of composers who had issues that many of us deal with. And he makes that a part of the concert. Will be Dr. Kogan discussing this with the audience and making this part of a broader conversation. We've created a partnership with SUMA where he will be presenting this same program to the residents and the doctors at SUMA, and that will put our musicians in their behavioral health program for an entire year to work with their patients, for their patients to work with our musicians to make behavioral health, mental health, and music as a healing art, or at least as a therapeutic art, something that is more mainstream. It's just one of the 7 programs we're doing this year, but it's the way that we're trying to really impact and listen to our community. I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Let me just mention really quickly, this isn't so much well, maybe it is a question. The 5th of July in Hudson this year, the Akron Symphony Orchestra played over there on the ball fields at Case Barlow Farm. It was fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And it was explosions and lights. But
we had electric guitar at that,
and an electric guitar, and it was awesome. And I think the crowd really loved it. I know it wasn't your usual fare, but
it was exactly our usual fare. That's what's actually, that was exactly the same program we had performed at Lock 3 in Akron the night before. It is part of our usual fare.
Well, it was awesome.
Thank you.
I don't know what your plans are for this year, but I don't know if you came back. Believe me, I'll bring lots of friends too.
Thank you. That will be up to, I think, the city and the funders who supported that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Others?
I was there too, and it was very good.
Thank
you.
you.
And I also sang with Gospel Meets Symphony.
You were what? I'm sorry?
I've sang with Gospel.
Oh, did you really?
15 years.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. It's fun, isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. You know, this is our 3rd month that we've had a series, a speaker series, and I think we have to thank that committee, which is George Snyder, Bill Wooldridge, Roseanne Drake, Jim Ahern, and John Archer. As an example today, the speakers just keep getting better every week. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Cluster meeting following this meeting in the boardroom. Everyone is welcome to attend. There is a club board meeting next week. So I'd like to thank our greeters today, Jim Ahern and Lynn Zupp, for this. That will be our greeters in November. And our setup crew, Tom Page, James Field was here today, John Hairston, Den Rich, and of course to tearing down Ron Barhouse. Drawing for the Rotabuck. Payout is $22, and the jackpot is way up there, $867. I'm going to let Paul draw the winning ticket.
Can I still put mine in? Oh, well.
Okay, and the last 4 digits, 4614. 4614. That was early. Is it Mimi? $22. Here's your marble. 1 black marble. Yeah, you have to pick the black marble to win the jackpot. No. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.